Gilbert Burns has come out, and he said that he believes that Edwards versus Usman, part 3, is going to be closer. He even laid out his case. He said, well, you know what? If you go back and you look at that fight, said Leon took him down, took him out, took his back in the first round. They were at altitude. And you guys will remember altitude and how that affected, because you saw it more in Luke Rockhold than anybody else. Remember how tired you were getting out there? So Leon has this great moment. Then there's something called an adrenaline dump. I mean, I could get all into it. I just fully understand what Burns is saying. That first round went better than expected, and it went so well that it drained a little energy, not to mention the elevation, which allowed Kamaru to come on for a few rounds. Leon comes back, catches him. Leon's going to learn from that, and he's going to be able to draw a motivation and a confidence from that. Do better the third time. Very simple comment. Very logical guess. That wasn't my takeaway. My takeaway from hearing Burns talk about Kamaru and Leon 3, okay? That fight's not announced. There is no Kamaru and Edwards 3 that's announced. Now, it could have been announced that night, but it wasn't. Why wasn't it? Well, it wasn't announced because we had Chimaev versus Diaz coming up in a week, and the public was told that was going to be a number 1 contenders match. So we got to let this play out, and we'll come back to it. Either way, if you're the athlete, you just got some time. Now, Chimaev ends up missing weight, and Diaz rides off into the sunset. We all know this story. But where's Colby? I mean, just as an example. And the one person who tried to stick their nose in there, right? I understand it's going to be Kamaru and Leon. I understand that that's likely. But either way, what's different today than was yesterday, and you didn't announce it? That gives an opportunity. That gives an opportunity to plead your case, to argue your point, for the Bilal Muhammads of the world to speak up. And I'm more just sharing with you the fact that they didn't. And we'll never know. We'll never know now because the Chimaev-Diaz number 1 contenders match didn't take place. We'll never know. I believe, had that match taken place, had it taken place at the agreed upon weight class, and had it gone the way that the odds makers predicted, I believe Chimaev would have been standing in there with Leon. Now, I don't think Kamaru would have gotten screwed. I don't think Kamaru would have to go have a contenders match. I think Kamaru would wait. I think Chimaev would have fought Leon, and Kamaru's next match would be for the title. It would just be for the winner of Chimaev versus Leon. Conspiracy theory, can't prove any of it. That's what I think. There was only one promise made, and it wasn't to Usman. The promise made was to the audience that Chimaev versus Diaz would be a number 1 contenders match. I think that would have been preserved had that happened. I think. And I'm moreover trying to bring you a point, right? I'm just trying to bring you a point that we like to call a sandhagen. And I do feel that guys oftentimes in this sport come up with stories and they accept things that aren't true. They're narratives and they're built in the media. I feel like they don't see the clues around them. If we were going to do Kamaru versus Leon, if that was it and it was done, why didn't we announce it? Why? Because we were looking at something else. Why do you think we didn't announce Glover versus Prohaska, which was the single greatest, at least entertainment-wise, light heavyweight fight of all time? Well, because we were looking at something else. That's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to get in there and make sure that you're that something else. And I don't see that. And I'm not giving Gilbert a hard time at all. But if you ever find yourself saying, well, this is all that makes sense, or you have a manager or a trainer or somebody else going, well, this is the one that makes sense. Well, what makes the most sense? The most sense is Kamaru versus Leon. I understand that. But if you find yourself saying that, just understand you are always going to be limited on what makes sense to the confines of your own creativity. Always. So if you're not creative enough to think of a solution, I mean, I'm seeing it right now in the heavyweight division. The heavyweights have stood back to let Jones, who's never fought there, Stipe, who got carried out in his last fight, and Francis, who apparently doesn't even have a contract, form a little elitist club round robin and be over here to figure this out. However you want to do it. You can put Jones with Stipe, you can put Jones with Francis, you can put Francis with Stipe, you can do anything you want, but it's those three, and we're all going to be over here waiting till they figure it out. That's never been said. That's never been stated. That is a narrative and a belief because you think that's what makes sense. But when you say something makes sense, you're confined to your own levels of creativity. I'd be putting a wrench in this whole thing if my guy hadn't gone down with a bad knee. If Aspinall would have got the jump on Curtis Blaydes, believe me, you would be hearing from me over here, not to mention the hardest opponent for Jones or Stipe, style-wise, is Curtis Blaydes, who's silent. One of the great arguments, of course, would be Ciryl Gane, who is 16-1 and a former champion, coming off a decisive finish victory over the number 4 guy. You show me a time in history that number 1 has beaten number 4 in a main event by stoppage and didn't get a world title fight. Show me one time any weight class you want. The number 1 guy just stopped the number 4 guy in a main event. Show me one time in history that didn't get you a title shot. Ciryl's not even calling for it. Ciryl's sandhagging like all the rest of them. He has no idea what's going on around him. We've elected a narrative that these 3 guys are going to go, we don't even care what order. That's how much power these 3 guys have. They can do it in any order that they want. We'll make it an undisputed title. We'll do these guys. We'll make it an interim title. Like, we got this whole thing figured out. Okay. All right. It's your career. You can fight for it or not. You can follow a narrative that's out there, or you can follow the sport. Usman and Leon Part 3 isn't signed. It's going to be. This isn't the world's greatest example that I'm giving you about this match. But I would be inserting myself. I would be poking into that every chance I got. I would be looking at the calendar. I would see where they are fighting. And then I'd be inserting myself. Hey, you know what? Hey, I see you guys are going to Columbus. You know, I went to college in Columbus. Hey, I see you guys are going to Portugal. You know, I got family in Portugal. I did an exchange there. My junior, whatever the story was, and however I was inserting myself, I would be doing it. I wouldn't be stepping aside. I wouldn't be accepting things. And I wouldn't be make-believing that a fight is going to happen in a division that I compete in that's not signed. Why is it not signed? Perfectly fair question by me. But much like no 205-pounders stepped in, so grab Glover. We looked around for 6 weeks, but we ended up with this one. Nobody else stepped forward. Nobody came forward. Even Chimaev is playing nice. I realize that Chimaev missed weight, but all the same, even Chimaev is playing nice. So I guess we're going to go make the fight. And I guess Jones, who's never done it, and Stipe, who got carried out in his last one, and Francis, who doesn't even have a contract, I guess they can do whatever they want. We'll make up a belt if we have to. And by the way, do it any way you want. It's a weird way to run your career. It's a weird way to buy in. And if you ever feel it's the only thing that makes sense, you are confined to the limits of your own creativity.